Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, October 28th, 2020, and today we mark 6 days until Election Day. And Donald Trump is now outlining his final stretch, his final strategy to win the presidency. Now, Bloomberg News actually released a report today that I'm going to be covering later. So we're going to be talking about where the Trump campaign is allocating almost their entire advertising budget. Donald Trump's campaign is very much cash poor, and they're putting ads in 4 battleground states in particular. These are the 4 states that Donald Trump really sees where his pathway to 270 lies. These are the states of Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at what that would look like on an electoral map. Well, combined, these states take up 64 electoral votes. I find it fascinating that President Trump is not going to be allocating ad spending in Wisconsin. This is a state that's neighboring Minnesota and Michigan. I think he thinks that the ad waves will probably stretch from Minnesota over into Wisconsin, but the region where he really needs to do well isn't exactly on the Minnesota border. And when we're talking about politics itself, if he's targeting 4 out of the 5 key states in this region, I just don't see why he's not targeting the 5th one. Now, I could understand had he seen the new Wisconsin data out today. I'm making another video discussing this because it's honestly very fascinating that we have 2 conflicting A-rated pollsters. ABC News, Washington Post, A+ rated, shows Joe Biden 17 points ahead in a state Donald Trump won in 2016. Obviously, that is an outlier, but still, the fact that that outlier could even reach those numbers is very telling about the election itself. So Donald Trump's final campaign strategy lies in these 4 battleground states. And I'm going to talk about why I think that this is a smart strategy for the president. I mean, this is probably one of his best plays. Now, if it would be one of his best plays, actually, might I add, if he wasn't down in a number of other battleground states. But if he's assuming that he's up, then it definitely makes sense to target these states heavily. But we all know that he isn't exactly up in all of the battleground states. He's only up in a couple. So let's go ahead and get started taking a closer look. So pretty much these are all of the states that went to Donald Trump in 2016 that are competitive this time around. States of Wisconsin, Iowa, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Florida, and Arizona. Now, I've already allocated 64 electoral votes from the final stretch column in favor of Donald Trump. These are red. If I was to move it over, you would see that his numbers went up to nearly 200 electoral votes, but I'm not going to do that just yet. That actually looks really weird. Let's go back to it just to show you how weird that map would look. But this electoral map really just doesn't make sense too much to me right now. I mean, this is a smart move if he was up in all of the other states. Now, what we saw in 2016 was that the Trump campaign, they knew they were up in North Carolina. They knew they were up in Arizona, Georgia, and Florida, and even Iowa. I mean, Donald Trump's final campaign strategy was holding in-person rallies, of course, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin. These were all states that the Trump campaign desperately needed to win the election, and he won all 3 of them. Now, for the Biden campaign, I'm sorry, I will take a cough drop at some point, but it doesn't really help. But the point of this campaign for Joe Biden was to win back the Rust Belt, win over a number of Clinton states from 2016, and then expand the electoral map. The point of Trump's campaign is playing defense. He is not going to expand his electoral map. As much as he'd like to win Minnesota, he is not going to win it. Now, like I said, this would be a smart strategy if and only if the Trump campaign knew they were solid in certain states. And based off their own internals and based off of what everyone else is seeing, Donald Trump is not the favorite in a number of these states. He may be the favorite in Texas. He may be the narrow favorite in Georgia. But he's not the favorite in North Carolina, Florida, or Arizona. But for the sake of this video, really quickly, we're going to characterize all these states for Donald Trump. And Iowa, Nebraska 2nd, and Maine 2nd District, and Wisconsin. So now you start to see why Trump is focusing on these 4 states in particular. I mean, he desperately needs them. If Joe Biden's able to hold these states, these were Obama states from 2016, well then Biden wins the election. Trump needs to hold on to all of them. He cannot afford to even lose, some of these states. He can afford to lose maybe, Minnesota, Michigan, if he's able to win Ohio, if he's able to win Pennsylvania. So if he wins either Ohio or Pennsylvania, he can afford to lose literally any of the other states. But that's assuming that he's ahead in Maine, in Nebraska, in North Carolina, in Iowa, in Georgia, in Florida, in Arizona, in Texas. These are all states that have become questionable from President Trump that previously would have never been in consideration for the Democratic Party. So this final stretch in these battleground states is a very telling sign as to where President Trump thinks he is. Either he thinks he's super confident about, or he is super confident about Florida, about Arizona, about Georgia, about North Carolina. Realistically, he has no reason to be. But if he is confident about them, then it sort of makes sense. But the problem is he's not up. And realistically, he should be looking for other pathways to 270. In fact, states such as Nevada and some other states across this country are closer than the Rust Belt. Let's take a look. Wisconsin has Biden ahead 8.4%. In Michigan, Biden runs ahead of Donald Trump by a 8-point margin. In Pennsylvania, Biden leads by 5%. So Pennsylvania and Ohio are probably the only two states that I'd say need heavy targeting. Minnesota, doesn't really need it either. I think it's larger than both Michigan and Wisconsin. Yeah, 9.2%. So these states are already likely for Joe Biden. Realistically, why is Donald Trump targeting them? I understand he wants to win them back, but Donald Trump is losing his grip in Iowa, losing his grip in North Carolina, in Florida, in Georgia, and Arizona. So if that even was the map, I am so sorry. That even was the map where Biden was winning in the South and even losing the Rust Belt, Donald Trump wouldn't win the election. Even if he was winning this entire region, Biden still wins if he's just able to do well in the South. And right now, today, Biden stands ahead in North Carolina, in Florida, in Georgia, and Arizona. So I find it fascinating that President Trump's final campaign strategy is just in this region. I really thought he would swoop through the South just to solidify his base. I think overconfidence is what, that brought down Hillary Clinton's campaign. That is bringing down Trump's campaign. Because Trump really needs to focus his final stretch on these states. He needs to focus it down here. The Rust Belt, for the most part, is a lost cause. The only two states that he really could target are Ohio and Pennsylvania. Michigan is gone. Wisconsin is gone. Minnesota is absolutely gone. All three of these states, 8 points or higher for Joe Biden. Hillary Clinton never enjoyed that in these three states this close to the election. So the fact that Biden is running ahead in these states and Trump is not running ahead in literally any of the other states except for Ohio and Texas, that's really bad news because he's focusing on states that at the end of the day, he won't be winning. He could win Pennsylvania. He definitely could win Ohio, but he's not winning Michigan. He's not winning Wisconsin. He's not winning Pennsylvania. And that is just a very sad reality for the president because as much as he'd like to win the states and expand his 2016 electoral map, unless he is solid in every other swing state, literally every other swing state, there is no reason to make your final stretch in Minnesota, in Michigan. He really should be playing defense to a point where he could win the election. Maybe not as large of a margin as 2016, but still win the election because 4 years is 4 years. It doesn't matter how you win. But the fact that actually, let me not say it doesn't matter how you win. It doesn't matter how you win legitimately. If Donald Trump is at a point where, he spent money in Minnesota and Michigan, and sure, the margin could be narrower. Let's say that happens and Trump wins Wisconsin. Well, what happens if Biden narrowly wins North Carolina because of the lack of attention? What happens if Florida narrowly goes to Biden because Trump is too busy in the Rust Belt? Same story in Arizona. You see, the thing about the Clinton campaign was that she did not visit Wisconsin. She barely visited Michigan. So when those two states voted red, the Trump campaign was very happy. Their efforts paid off. Clinton's campaign spent so much time in North Carolina, in Florida, in Arizona, in states that voted for Donald Trump, sometimes 3-4%. So the problem with Clinton's campaign was that she wasn't focusing on the states that were expected to go to her. That's exactly what we're seeing Donald Trump do. The Biden campaign is making a play for Texas. The Biden campaign is making a play for Georgia. These states should never have been competitive to begin with. And I understand the whole argument, well, why isn't Joe Biden in the Rust Belt? Well, first things first, he is. But besides that, the Rust Belt has shown us that they are much more in favor of having Joe Biden as president than Hillary Clinton. I understand that the polls could technically be wrong again, but they probably won't be. 2016 was within the margin of error. This is double the margin of error. So when you're looking at where Biden is leading, it makes sense that he's making a play for Texas and Georgia while he's, spending money in some of these states. The Trump campaign is broke. The Biden campaign has hundreds of millions of dollars today. They still have hundreds of millions of dollars 6 days to Election Day. And the Trump campaign is spending just a handful of $1 million across the Rust Belt to win it. So Trump's campaign strategy, I think, is going to falter. It would be smart if everything else was working his way, but it's not. He's narrowly winning in Texas. He's narrowly winning in Georgia, but he's behind in Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. And if those states go blue, even if those states that he's targeting today go red, Biden still wins the election. And that is just the story of 2020. We're going to see a very weird electoral map. Hopefully, it follows some trends. Hopefully, things aren't as weird as this map right here, but it is possible. And if Trump's final stretch really is hinging on these 64 electoral votes in total, I don't have much hope for the president in his re-election bid. It's very hard for me to draw a conclusion where he's able to win the election, by going through these 4 states in particular. It's possible only and only if he sweeps practically all of the other swing states, because right now we have more than the ones that I just highlighted. These are the swing states. Nevada, I guess, if you want to be technical, New Hampshire, if you want to be technical, but really, these are all the swing states. Biden is currently leading in almost all of them. In fact, based off polls, he is leading in all of them except Texas because Iowa just moved over. So when we're looking at the numbers, there is no way that I could draw a map where Trump is able to win unless he's solid in all of these states, which means that this final stretch probably won't amount to anything. The only thing that I really could see being swayed in terms of these 4 states, actually swayed, is Ohio, which is neck and neck right now. And this final stretch could make a difference for Donald Trump in this state. But Ohio also has a very long record of being correct, and it might not vote incorrectly this time around. So if Ohio ends up going blue, that'll be a very strong indicator that Joe Biden's winning the presidency. But there's also a very real possibility Ohio goes red and breaks its 60-year streak. Everything has to end at some point. And this year could be Ohio's ending. So Donald Trump at 127, Biden at 212. Trump focusing on 64 electoral votes out of the 200 toss-up electoral votes. Ask yourself, when you're down 8 points in Minnesota and Michigan, and you're down 8 points in Wisconsin, and you're down 5 in Pennsylvania, and you're down less than a point in Ohio, well, it makes sense to visit that state of Ohio. You're down by less than a point in Iowa. It makes sense to visit Iowa. It doesn't make sense to visit states where you're down by 5 points or more. Biden is only down in Texas by 3 points. He's up in all of the other states. But Trump very well could be visiting Texas. He very well could be solidifying his base in Georgia, a state that Biden is actually running ahead of Trump today. In North Carolina, where Trump is only down 2%. In Florida, where Trump is only down 2%. Arizona, where Trump is only down 3%. Ask yourself, if you were working for the Trump campaign, would you advise them to go to states where they are down by lower margins or higher margins? I understand that the Trump campaign is confident that they will somehow win and sweep all of these states, but they're banking on a lot. They're expecting a lot to follow through with them. And, at the end of the day, they probably won't. Arizona probably isn't going red. North Carolina and Florida probably aren't going red. They could. I'm not saying that they will, though. And, the fact that the Trump campaign isn't focusing on the states that really will be making a significant difference. I mean, yes, obviously Michigan and Minnesota are important, but these states are lost causes for Trump. The states in the South are not, and he's neglecting them. He's taking their vote for granted. And the Democratic Party can tell you that is something you should never do. 2016 was a shock because they took numerous votes for granted. And that's exactly the same thing that I'm seeing from the Trump campaign. So as they move into the next 6 days, and as they spend money in these 64 electoral votes, it'll likely be to no avail. And that is something that the Trump campaign is going to have haunt them if they lose this election, because this race was very winnable from the beginning. It was very winnable for both sides, and it's come down to a point where it seems as if only Joe Biden can win. And that may seem like a very similar story from 2016, but this time there is a lot more data to back it up than just a couple of polls that show Clinton ahead by 3 points in a state. This time we're seeing Biden ahead run by 8, 9, sometimes double digits. He's up 9 points nationally. So no matter where you look, Biden is outperforming Hillary. On top of that, he's just doing significantly better in swing states in terms of popularity, and voter turnout today hit over 70 million votes. So we're on track to see record-breaking turnout this time around. So that's Trump's campaign strategy. I'm going to be uploading a video later today, so stay tuned for that one. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord link for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2020 election predictions. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you all later today.